Yo, what's going on guys? It's Dude here, and today we're back with a brand new video. This time around, we're going to be covering the BMW cars in Gran Turismo 7. Honestly, before the summer of 2024, I hadn't really driven a lot of the BMW cars. That's why the creation of this video was so intriguing to me, and I really hope you guys enjoy the builds that I came up with today. Before we get into the setup, if you would consider subscribing and also leaving a like on the video, I would greatly appreciate that. I'm on the road to 10,000 subscribers, and more importantly, you should leave a comment in the comment section below to let me know which car or group of cars you would like to see me make setups for next. I'm always taking your guys' opinions into consideration, and of course, if you guys request it, I'll make it. So the first car we're going to be discussing today is none other than the BMW M6 GT3. This is probably the most popular BMW in the entire game, mostly because it resides in the GR3 class. And the M6 at the moment is one of the strongest GR3 cars with BOP equipped, but how does it fare when tuned? Pretty damn well. The M6 boasts some of the category's best high-speed cornering potential alongside the Renault RS01. It also has a great top speed for a front-engine GR3 car. Where the car begins to struggle is coming out of low-speed corners on the power. It takes a steady foot to manage the influx of boost around 4,000 RPM, and due to the M6 being on the heavier side, it feels a little lazy entering medium to low-speed corners. This setup does a good job masking these tendencies, though a rearward brake balance is recommended. Despite the M6 downsides, it always seems to find a way into most people's GR3 rotation, and the lap time more than backs up the hype. Between 700 and 750 pp, this car is super strong, though even maxed out, it can be effective on most tracks. Rewind a few years back, and you get another GR3 BMW, the M3 GT. Like the M6, it has fantastic high-speed cornering, though with none of the downsides in the low-speed corners. It's no surprise when I was testing this car, I thought it was going to blow the M6 out of the water maxed out for the lap time. While the lap time was slightly faster, it wasn't nearly as fast as I thought. This can be attributed mostly to the M3's GT straight line performance. One of the M3's strengths in GT Sport was its top speed. In GT7, it's just average, and on top of that, the acceleration in the lower gears is pretty abysmal. The M3 GT doesn't really understeer, but it doesn't really oversteer either. The sensation through the steering wheel is unlike any car I've felt in GT7, which makes the driving experience unique. If run maxed out, I would recommend sticking to tracks with lots of high-speed corner and avoid ones with acceleration zones. The M3 may not be the best option for the lower PP ranges, though with this setup equipped, it has major upset potential on select tracks. Next up, we have the BMW Z4 GT3. Yes, BMW has 3 GR3 cars, crazy. To all the people who basically only race GR3 on this game, of which I know there are many of you, you have this car to thank. It was one of the first GT3 cars introduced to Gran Turismo back during the PS3 era of games, but does the driving experience live up to the legendary status? Well, if lap time is the primary metric you're looking for, it's the best BMW GT3 car in GT7 currently. It easily has the best low-speed traction and acceleration of the trio, and can more than handle itself when it comes to top speed as well, despite maxed out MR cars usually winning out in this area. Put simply, it's a notch above the other two BMW GR3s, at least when tuned, and since the PP rating is pretty low for the overall package, it's a top tier car for 700 to 750 PP GR3 racing. The clown shoe certainly came to play in GT7, and sometimes the old dog doesn't need to learn new tricks. Before I get into talking about 87 more M3s, let's get the Z8 over with. If I'm being honest, the expectations for this car were pretty low, and while the car isn't great, my low expectations were at least met. Dynamically, the Z8 really doesn't do anything well besides braking. It seems to be super unstable at high speeds while lacking overall grip due to the lack of downforce. At low speed, the turn-in is okay, but I've never seen a car with 600 horsepower struggle to put the power down on racing softs quite like this one does. At least not at this price point. For this reason, I thought the lap times were going to be terrible. But for under 740 pp, they actually weren't that bad. I say the Z8 is somewhat competitive in 750 pp lobbies or when detuned for 700. Though in the lower pp lobbies, I would stick to racing tire lobbies and events, as sports tires will make the low speed traction even worse. Despite the lack of standout qualities, the Z8 sounds great, looks unique, and has a lot of aura anytime you see it on track. Really, you should go consider picking one up. Switching gears to maybe the most iconic BMW of all time, the E46 M3 handles itself well in GT7. Here, I have its Z4 GT3 engine swap inside of this car, though without the swap, it may be even stronger for the lower PP levels. The balance of the E46 feels great. I really love the way it turns into corners, and for a 20-year-old platform, it manages the extra power from the Z4 motor really well. Though the low speed stability isn't necessarily on the level of many mid-engine engine cars for a 775 to 780 pp car. The lap time potential is decent, though this car really comes to life closer to 750 pp and possibly lower. And for that reason, opting out of the engine swap is completely reasonable. And thankfully, this setup works great without the swap as well. Not the best car in GT7, but the E46 is super nice to drive, and I hope you guys enjoy it for those of you BMW lovers out there. Next up, we have the BMW M4 GR4 car. Of all of the front-engine GR4 cars, this is definitely one of my favorites to drive. Like its older GT3 brother, the M6, it has amazing grip in the high-speed corners while maintaining corner entry stability, which seems to be a reoccurring theme with the BMW cars in GT7. While the balance with this setup is spot on, the low-speed cornering performance leaves a bit to be desired. This is likely due to its weight, which is above average for the GR4 category. But thankfully, the M4's power delivery is very aggressive lower in the revs, to the point where short shifting this car is actually faster for overall lap time. Overall, I like the M4 GR4, and as far as the 650 to 700 pp GR4, it's a strong option with beginner-friendly driving characteristics. And that segues me perfectly to the BMW M4 street car. Of all the BMWs in this video, this may have been the one that surprised me the most. I was a little late to the party with this car, as the first time I drove it was this past summer. Based on other sports coupes in GT7, I didn't expect the M4 to handle this well. The speed this car can carry through the high-speed corners is comparable to some of the best front-engine road cars in the game, and while the straight-line performance is middle of the road for its PP level, the overall handling more than makes up for it. Not only is this car super competitive in 800 pp lobbies, despite being 20 points under 800, but if brought down to 750 or 700, forget it. This thing will rip apart almost any car, especially on handling-based tracks. One of the biggest pleasant surprises of the year, and if you don't have one of these built up already, please go do it. While the M4 is a tough act to follow, this recent addition to GT7 can go toe-to-toe with the M4 despite being 18 performance points lower. The E36 M3, equipped with the infamous LS7 BRZ drift car motor, is an animal. Widely regarded as undrivable after the 1.49 release due to the heavy oversteer on the brakes. Not only does this setup remedy that issue, but it allows the E36 to punch well above its weight, being highly competitive in 800 pp lobbies and straight up dominant in 750 pp lobbies. It doesn't handle quite as well as the M4. However, on power-based tracks, the E36 will be a good weapon to have in your arsenal for the tracks the M4's lack of horsepower may hinder it. While a steady foot is definitely needed out of the slower corners, most of the other cars with this swap are literally undrivable. The E36 M3 more than exceeded my expectation and will definitely be a staple of my 800 pp fleet moving forward. Switching gears to a more historic model, we have the 1973 version of the 3.0 CSL. Probably my favorite looking BMW in GT7. Beyond the looks, there's plenty of substance as well. The car's balance is amazing in the low-speed corners with lots of grunt down the straight for its power level. It's a compelling option for any car enthusiast. What lets this car down is its lack of front downforce. This also puts the PP rating of the CSL in a weird no man's land maxed out, meaning detuning for the lower PP races may be a good option. Despite the lack of front-end aero, this car corners decently well in high-speed corners, and if driven correctly, will show out against any other historic cars from this time. Next up, we have the fastest car in this video, but also probably the biggest disappointment in the video. This is the McLaren F1 GTR, but it is under BMW in the dealer. This BMW powered McLaren F1 GTR unfortunately got massacred by the previous update. Inexplicably, Polyphony Digital decided to take 100 pounds of front and rear downforce away from the F1 GTR, making it utterly useless against the other GR2 cars in this game, maybe other than the Toyota GT1 TS020, which is an atrocity I'll talk about in another video. But because of its lack of prowess maxed out, I've turned this thing into an 800 pp build. It's actually really good. Fantastic straight line speed, solid handling with a nice balance that's not too oversteery, and great fuel mileage on top of it. However, I can only give it partial points for this since all of the GR2 cars are really good at 800 pp racing, so the nonsensical decision to nerf this car's downforce is extremely frustrating, and for the $20 million price tag, I can't help but feel robbed by PD. Give me back the car that I originally paid for, please. Next up, a car that a lot of you have probably been waiting for up to this point, the BMW M3 E30 performance model. The first of two E30s in this video is going to be the swapped version. The engine in question is actually the 2020 Toyota Supra turbocharged V6, putting out just over 800 horsepower. For a car from this era, this would usually be a death sentence as far as the drivability goes. But surprisingly, the E30 M3 handles this extra horsepower well. For the balance, the car doesn't really understeer or oversteer, though understandably on power it can be a little sketchy in the low speed corners. If the M4 is the 800 pp car you want for handling courses, and the E36 M3 is the one you want for power courses, then this lies somewhere in the middle. One of the best sleeper builds and a true supercar killer once the driver can master the car's tendencies. This is definitely a must-have in my opinion. Next up, we have the often overlooked E92 generation of M3, which also has the Z4 GT3 motor available for it. This setup will be utilizing the swap, though the setup will also work well with the stock engine as well. While the race car version of the E92 is a standout in the handling department, the road car version struggles in this area slightly. Despite getting the standard crop of aero bits in the tuning shop, the maximum allowed front downforce is only 100, which is tied for the second worst in this video. For this reason, I think this car is better utilized as a 700 pp or 750 pp build. The 750 version doesn't excel in any particular area, but it doesn't falter in any of them either, meaning it's a pretty solid car, and if you're a good driver, you could win with it. It does have a tendency to understeer a bit too much for my taste, but this characteristic makes it very beginner friendly, which is why I recommend it to anyone who's new to the game. Not a standout car by any means, but still a respectable M3 that many of us have fond memories of from our younger years. Next up, we have the BMW 3.0 CSL, but this time the 1971 version. Normally in a video like this, I'd skip out on adding an alternate version of the same car, but the 1971 version of the CSL differs enough from the 73 that it's worth throwing you guys a 650 pp build for it anyways. The main strength of this car has to be the addition of front downforce, which the 1973 model doesn't have. And though we don't have much power and the car feels a little softer at low speeds, this front downforce really improves the balance in high speed corners. And as far as 650 pp car goes, this thing is a blast. It can easily be brought down to lower pp's as well, and it handles well on sports tires if needed. It really says something when the oldest car in this video is this nice to drive. For the right price, you should pick one of these up. It has tons of customization options, and I personally love using it in cruising lobbies. From the oldest car in the video to the newest, the penultimate offering today is the BMW M2 Competition. My first impression of the car was great, but I didn't really get around to driving it maxed out until recently, and while it's definitely a solid car, if I'm being honest, it kinda just feels like a worse M4. This is reflected by the PP rating, which is 7 points lower, but I wouldn't really feel nearly as comfortable running this in an 800 pp lobby as I would with the M4. The setup I'm providing here is good for maxed out, but if you remove some of the front downforce and downgrade the brakes, it would excel even more in the 700 to 750 pp range, which is a very common spot for many of the BMW cars in this game. It has a tough time getting on the power at a low speed corner sometimes, and it also feels like the cornering is a bit mid for a car with this much downforce, but I do still think it's worth having regardless, and I also generally really like the styling of this car. I think any PP range under 750, this car actually fares pretty well. And last but not least, to close out the video, we have the non-sport evolution version of the BMW M3. While this car does have an engine swap, I feel the Sport Evolution's engine swap is just better overall, meaning it would be more practical to make a setup with the stock engine for this M3. Many of the endearing handling characteristics of the swapped Sport Evolution are still felt in the base model. Fantastic turn-in, great aero and body control, and good brakes as well. Like the 1973 3.0 CSL, this car's PP rating maxed out is in a bit of a no man's land. For that reason, it's a good opportunity to get creative and try this car all over the place and see what performance level you enjoy the most. Anyone who grew up in the 1980s and 1990s knows about this car's racing pedigree and legendary status. Now with a setup to match, you'll be unstoppable here in GT7. Well, would you look at that? You made it to the end of the video. Congratulations. This is going to be one of the longest tuning videos that I've done so far. BMW is definitely teetering on the edge of me making two separate videos for the manufacturer. However, I opted just to do one, and a lot of you requested this, so I made sure to get on it as soon as possible. Yeah, and it certainly did take me quite a bit of work to do this, so if you guys could leave a like, comment, and also subscribe, I would greatly appreciate it. Like I said at the beginning of the video, leave your recommendations for manufacturers in the comment section below. I'm definitely reading them and prioritizing the ones that people request. But other than that, guys, I don't want to let this drag on too long. I hope you guys all have a fantastic night. It's been your boy, Dude, and I'm out. Peace.